Hello everyone, good morning and good evening to all our participants. My name is Vidya Santanam. I'm the co-founder of FitBots, and FitBots is very excited to bring to you in collaboration with Moving the Needle, a webinar on Slingshot, your OKR Success. The speaker for today is Bart and Haak. Bart is the Principal Leadership and OKR Consultant from Moving the Needle. A little bit about FitBots. We are an OKR management and engagement check-in platform. We help organizations globally to align and engage their teams on this very inspirational framework called OKRs. FitBots did a study with hundreds of millennials and Gen Zs to really understand what is the future of not performance management, but on performance enablement. And the top 3 outcomes of that study, which was conducted in 2019, was that employees in organizations today really want feedback which is constructive, something which is not only driven on their roles, but also to help them manage their careers. So that really came up as one of the #1 asks. The second is employees believe that performance management is significantly shifting from reviews and ratings to really understanding what is the purpose of me being in the organization. So there was a heavy focus on goals becoming more and more important rather than just reviews and ratings. So if you see, that's a significant shift from the downstream to the upstream. And finally, one of the asks was, how do you really make this entire enablement process a lot more interactive and real-time? So these 3 points really helped us to bring to you FitBots, which is an OKR and engagement check-in platform, where teams come together to align their team OKRs and individual OKRs to organizational OKRs so that there's greater clarity of a sense of purpose. It helps teams to really drive agile feedback, so that feedback is not a year-end or a mid-year activity, but something which is very, very part of the goal management process. And finally, checking in on their engagement levels through greater insights as to whether teams are engaged or disengaged. So on this note, I would be very happy to introduce to you the speaker and presenter of the day, Bart and Haak. Bart is a principal leadership and OKR consultant of Moving the Needle. He's based out of the Netherlands. Bart has worked with a number of organizations, both high-growth startups as well as scale-up and enterprises, to really drive an OKR-driven culture. So as you listen to Bart's webinar today, you would see the significant shift on OKRs from traditional performance management process and how our organizations clearly adopting OKRs to drive growth as well as alignment. Bart has also been a speaker at a very recent conference at Amsterdam, which is the Global OKR Conference, and his was one of the top scoring sessions. So Bart, we are excited to have you over at FitBots, and over to you for your session.
Thank you very much, Vikram. Thank you very much for your kind words. Let me share my screen in just a moment. Oh, there it is. So I'm an independent OKR consultant at Moving the Needle, and I help small companies, startups, scale-ups, and large corporations. And I have a special focus on growing high-performance software companies with OKRs. So today I'm going to talk about Slingshot, your OKR success. But before I'm going to start with that, I'm going to talk about the mission, vision, and strategy of a company. Because it turns out that 95% of all company employees are unaware or do not understand its strategic or company goals. And it's not only the employees that don't understand it, it's also management. So almost 2/3 of all management, of all managers, they don't understand or cannot name their company top priorities. And one of my favorite questions to management always is like, can you tell me your strategy? And I get multiple responses, but one of them is, well, we don't have a real strategy. And well, then at least they're honest, right? And the other is, well, we're aiming to do X, where X can be anything. We are doing a digital transformation. We are moving to the cloud, or some other activity that they're going to do. Well, this is not a strategy. It can be part of your strategy, but it's not necessarily a strategy. And then this is my favorite, 10 fluffy rambling sentences like maximizing shareholder wealth by exceeding customer expectations for, well, whatever product or service, and providing opportunities for our employees, and blah, blah, blah. A very long sentence that probably nobody will remember. And as a result of this lack of strategy or a fake strategy, you see that companies that are doing an organizational health index score, it's basically a survey that they send out from time to time. You see that the score of lack of direction is very high. So employees indicate that there's a clear lack of direction, and employees say that they're missing clarity or focus, or the lack of purpose makes employees less motivated. So you see a drop in motivation. You see also very little innovation or learning initiatives going on. Repeated change initiative fail, too many ad hoc issues and too much firefighting. Well, and the list goes on and on and on. But the biggest problem is that you see low organization and team performance because of the lack of strategy or unclear strategy. So how can companies define a clear strategy? Well, first, they need to start with the very basic, which is the mission of the company. Why does the company exist in the first place? And that should be already obvious, right? And based on this vision, based on the mission, a company should have a vision. And a vision is nothing more than a dream with a plan. And hopefully also tied together with metrics, that vision needs to be crystal clear. Because if you don't have a vision of a company, if you don't have a plan for the 5 to 10 years, for the next 5 to 10 years, then how can you define a strategy to make sure that you achieve this vision? And of course, a company also has values, and this all ties together. But let's have a closer look at strategy. If you look at strategy, it consists of 3 elements. You have the scope. And so what's the scope of your strategy? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Then you should have a clear objective. And of course, you should have a competitive advantage. What are the key activities in your organization that you're going to do differently than your competitors that are very hard to copy? And this is the elements of a strategy. And after you've defined your strategy, then you need to communicate it. So how do you communicate it? Well, most of organizations, and especially large organizations, they like sending around large Word documents or PDF documents throughout the organization, sending it by email, or having Excel sheets, or, well, maybe they have some nice pictures. But the problem is that nobody will remember this. And the same is true for smaller organizations. They can fill in their lean canvas or their Rockefeller habits, but still it's very difficult to communicate the strategy. And this is really important. So a better approach, of course, is to start using OKRs. So meet OKRs. And if you're already familiar with OKRs, then you might want to relax and sit back a little bit. But in the late 70s, then there was a guy called Andy Grove, and he had similar issues. He worked as Intel, as VP at Intel, and he had similar issues. There was a strategy, but they find it difficult to communicate it and to translate that into clear goals. And because of this frustration, he adopted it and changed it. And well, everything, I guess, is history, because he invented OKRs by then. And then John Doerr, the venture capitalist, he took it to Google, and I think the rest is history. The nice thing about OKRs is that it is an open source framework. So that means everybody can use it. There's plenty of documents available, plenty of books available, and there's no certification attached to that, so which is really nice. Everybody should adopt it to their needs. And you see now, especially in the United States, in Silicon Valley, a large amount of tech companies adopted it, and now you see this trend moving forward to Europe and also to Pacific Asia. Why should you use OKRs? OKRs is a tool. And this tool helps you with something to solve. So, for example, it helps you to support in strategic execution of your ambitious goals. For example, if you have ambitions to have 10x growth in your company, or to help you support in establishing new organizational structures. It also helps you with organization and team effectiveness. See the 5 pillars of Google. And then it helps you with company agility because, well, there's a fast-moving world where you see a lot of startups coming up. There's a lot of disruptors that are disrupting the market, and companies need to be more agile, and not only in the teams, but on the company level. And of course, it increases the clarity, focus, and employee engagement. So that's also one of the reasons why you want to use OKRs. So there are plenty of benefits to OKRs, and most of the times I see companies using those benefits as a reason to implement OKRs, but these are benefits, these are side effects because of OKRs, not because you're going to do OKR. So it drives behavior change, both in your customers and employees. It helps you with goal transparency throughout the whole organization. It improves focus and alignment, and purpose, autonomy for teams, and it promotes visionary thinking. This is where innovation comes from. And seeing progress on goals makes us really happy. OKRs is a mechanism to help you with seeing progress towards your higher level goals, and this will makes us happy. And well, actually, your body is making dopamine, and dopamine is making us happy. So this also helps with happy employees. But there's a big warning, of course. OKR is a cultural shift. It is a big implementation. It is a big change in your organization. So there's also a big cost involved in implementing OKRs. So let's briefly touch on the key elements of OKRs. OKRs is an abbreviation for objective and key results. And an objective is a memorable, short, quantitative and inspirational description of what you want to achieve. It's describing the what. To give you an example, become the market leader in free streaming video. It's very inspirational. It's action oriented. It's become the market leader in free streaming video. And maybe you recognize the statement that's from YouTube. Let's have a look at another one. Sorry, I want to go to the key results first. So let's have a look at the key results. So the key results are a set of metrics that shows your progress towards your objective. And if it doesn't have a number, then it's not the key results. And those are the words from Mayer, VP of ex-CEO of Yahoo. And key results should be aspirational, but not impossible. So to give you an example, reach 1 billion hours of watch time per day by 2020. This is measurable. There's a metric, there's a number in it. It's aspirational. It will drive innovation. It's measurable on a daily basis, which is also nice. You can see the progress on a daily basis because you're going to monitor a daily watch time. So this is a nice example of a good key result. Then another key result, to drive engagement among team members through an incentive program. There's no number in this key result, so this is a wrong key result. It's an action, it's an output of something. So to introduce a new program, to introduce a new HR program, something like that, those are all actions, and you don't want to monitor actions, you want to monitor outcomes. So as a formula, I always say, like, you need to start from a baseline. So start from X to Y by when. Then you can define very good key results as a general rule of thumb. But when you're going to implement key results, you need to think about something important, which is the concept of the learning zone. So if you go to work, then everybody is going to do work in what is called the comfort zone. Here is your sweet spot. Here's the stuff that you're good at. So every day you come to work, you do your thing, and it's all inside your comfort zone. But key results, on the other hand, should push you into what is called the learning zone. So key results should push you out of your comfort zone and push you inside the learning zone. But don't try to stretch yourself too much when you're going to go for very stretch ambitious goals, because then you end up in a danger zone. I see way too often people setting way too stretch goals, and then people are ending in the danger zone. It's about working smarter and not working harder. So in order to reach a goal, you shouldn't work like 80 hours per week or 60 hours per week. It's about the way how you do your work. So it's a general rule of thumb. I would say like there should always be 50% chance that you're going to make them, and that you're going to make your key results. When you're going to start implementing OKRs, don't try to stretch yourself too much the first time, because you will fail. And good key results and good metrics, they change the way you behave. So they change the way how customers behave, and they change the way how employees behave. If your key results is if your key results achieve this, then you probably have good key results. So key results are clear finish lines for your business objectives, and they're really tied together to your mission, vision, strategy, and then the objective and the key results. Your objective helps you defining what is a successful strategy. But one mistake I see often companies make is that they don't have a strategy. So you can't start with OKRs without having a good strategy. It's that simple. So if your company doesn't have a strategy, you should focus on that first. So first try to come up with a mission, a vision, and a strategy, and only then you can implement OKRs. It's really important that you do this in this order to have a successful OKR implementation. So you can define OKRs, you can define your objectives, you can define your key results, but without having a proper OKR lifecycle, your OKR implementation will fail for sure. So an OKR lifecycle looks like this. At the beginning of the cycle, you set your OKRs, and then you're going to align them. You're going to align them with other teams, with management, and then you're going to announce them, and you're going to kick them off. You're going to announce it to the whole company. You make them transparent in your company, and for that you can use a tool. So if you're a small company, you can just use a whiteboard. You can put them on a whiteboard, your OKRs, or you can put them in a Google Doc or in a Google Sheet. And when your company is growing, when you have more teams using OKRs, then you need to think about using OKR software like Fitbots or something. And then, of course, throughout the cycle, you're going to do weekly check-ins. You're going to repeat that every week. And at the end of the cycle, you're going to reflect back on the cycle, and you're going to learn from your mistakes. You're going to learn from your goals, why you didn't achieve them, why you achieved them already throughout the life cycle. And you implement all those learnings in the next cycle, and then the cycle repeats. Well, that's actually all. So that's all about OKRs. This is basically crash course OKRs. And if you want to know more, then just please contact me. So let's have a look at a case study. So I've worked in several organizations, and one specific market is a highly regulated environment like finance. So this case study is about a financial institution, company size 500 plus employees, and they had a low OHI results on clarity, focus, and engagement. And they are a typical matrix organization, 3 levels of management, 4 different locations distributed over the world. And the objective was to increase the goal clarity and to increase employee engagement. So before, they just started without any help of consultants. So what I did, what most organizations are doing, is just reading the books, right? There are a lot of books written on OKRs already. The most famous one is Measure What Matters, which is released last year. But my favorite book is Radical Focus from Christine Watkey, because she has a radical view on how to implement OKRs, which I really like. And of course, there's also the presentation of John Doerr himself, and there are many more resources on the internet. So it's very easy to start with OKRs as an organization. So this organization did it in the same way. So they read all the resources available on OKRs, and then they're going to start with OKRs. And there's nothing wrong with this approach. So don't get me wrong, you can perfectly read the books and read everything there is on the internet about OKRs. But there's one challenge, and that's because you don't know what is going to work in your organization. And so all the examples in the books, they might be wrong, but they might work. But I see too many organizations just blindly copying what is written in the books or what's written on the internet. So you shouldn't believe everything what's written on the internet or in the books, because you need to make it very specific to your organization. So this organization, they started with OKRs, and they were very motivated to do this. So they started off OKRs at the beginning of 2019. So a little bit before, in December last year, they kicked them off. So big company announcement, going to start OKRs, and they kicked them off, and everybody was motivated. And then this happened. It's called the whirlwind, or maybe you also know it as business as usual. And so the company is kicking OKRs off, the goals are set, and then, well, business as usual happens because there are still a lot of projects. We still need to keep the lights on, right? There are a lot of high priority projects going on, and well, we basically going to forget about the OKRs. And what will happen is that people will say, and they're going to complain like, oh, OKRs are not working. Nothing has been moved in the OKRs. And maybe we should fall back to KPIs or something like that. So this is very typical. Organizations, they start with OKRs, and then business as usual kicks in, and they have no idea how to move the goals, how to move the needle basically on their key results. So you want to avoid distraction if you're going to implement OKRs. And there are a couple of ways to do that. And one of the implementation tips I always give to companies is start small. Start with a single OKR at all levels. So this may sound radical, and it is. But if you want to start with OKRs, try to start with a single OKR. So that means a single objective and a couple of key results. Yeah, so you want to do that on company level, you want to do that on team level or department level, and then stop. So try to keep it simple. And then if it works, then maybe try to increase the amount of OKRs. What's really important that you also want to monitor your business as usual with the KPIs. I always got the question, what's the difference between OKRs and KPIs? Well, KPIs are there to monitor your business as usual. And it's really important to measure this, because if you're going for a ambitious goal, then you want to keep an eye on the health of the organization. So it's important to also keep an eye on KPIs. And the most important thing is that you need to adopt the OKR lifecycle. So without adopting the OKR lifecycle, as I said before, your OKR implementation will be a big failure. And this is not well described online in the articles that you find, or well described in some of the books. But it is really important that you have and that you're going to build in this life cycle. And with special focus on the weekly check-ins. So the weekly check-ins are basically your vehicle. This is basically your key to successful OKR implementation. Without weekly OKR check-ins, your implementation will fail. So this is if you look at the cycle, you have to set, align, kick off, and then the weekly check-ins. So the weekly check-ins is basically your key to successful OKR implementation. And so this is what this organization did wrong. They read all the books. They started implementing it, but they didn't perform, for example, weekly check-ins. They didn't do the alignment. They just set the OKRs, and then they kicked them off, and they continued with it. So try to avoid just setting the OKRs and then forget about them. The next step, or the next big learning of this organization, was basically the introduction of OKRs. So like any change management process, like any change that you're going to do in your organization, you need to have a clear reason why you're going to do it. And the same applies to OKRs. So think about what is the urgency for OKRs? Why is it so important for your organization that you're going to implement OKRs? And management, especially senior management or the executives, need to communicate this to the workforce. Why are we going to start with OKRs and what problem will it solve for us? And so it's really important that you communicate this. Yeah. And last week, 2 weeks ago on the OKR forum, then Henrik Young made a really nice quote. He said, like, if you're going to introduce OKRs, you need to introduce the OKRs as a vegetable, right? Think about your children, if you have any, like, they don't like to eat vegetables, right? But you need to bring it as something that is really good for them, and they will become healthier if they eat it. And so it is not something that is always nice to implement. And so OKRs, implementing OKRs is difficult. It is tough. It will go along with some struggle, with uncertainty. But it is really important that you're going to communicate why you're going to implement OKRs. So this organization, they didn't say anything about the reason behind OKRs. They just say like, oh, from 2019 in January, we're going to start using OKRs, and we expect that everybody is going to implement it, and that all the teams are going to implement without communicating the reason behind it. So if you're going to start with OKRs, think about why are you going to use them. It's a tool. OKRs is a tool. It's also a specific problem. So communicate why. Communicate what is the specific problem for your organization, and then say why you want to use OKRs. So another learning that this organization had is the rollout of OKRs. So they started rolling out OKRs, and well, first they started with specifying the strategy, and they had several workshops about thinking about the strategic OKRs they have. So they did it together with the management. There was another OKR workshop setting where all the team leads were involved. They also contributed to OKR. So they started off pretty well. And then they had a big company announcement like, this is the OKR for the next year. And they had an annual OKR tied together to their strategy. And they were planning to do an OKR kickoff just a week after, but there was a big problem. And the problem was that the company OKRs were announced, and all the teams in the company were invited to think about how they could contribute to the OKRs. And in general, there's nothing wrong with this approach. But if you're going to start with OKRs, and you end up with a situation like this, where you have your company objective, you have your key results, then you have different departments of even different countries, where, for example, in this case, the company has a office in the UK and an office in the US. They all came up with objective and key results, and the IT department has objective and key results, and the product team had objective and key results, and there was a HR department. They couldn't connect even to the key results. And it's a big organization to connect everything together and to line everything together. So they really struggled with this approach. So I see that too often in organizations, they start with OKRs with all best intentions, and then they try to roll it out in one big go. So that doesn't work. So my advice will be to start small. So start small, start with a small OKR implementation. So there are 3 implementation approaches that you could take. My favorite one is to start with company level only. So start in the executive office only, and let the executive team experience OKRs for at least a couple of cycles. So they will have first hands insight in what it is, what it means to do OKRs, learn from the mistakes, and then those leaders can communicate OKRs to the rest of the organization, and they can coach the other employees on how to implement OKR. So start at the company level only. Don't have a big announcement to the rest of the organization like, oh, we're going to start OKRs, but maybe do it in stealth mode. Do it only in the executive office. That really helps. Another idea is that you start with an OKR pilot. So you look at your organization, you look at which departments you have, and look at which department has the best opportunity to work with OKRs. Then also involve management, so involve senior management as well, because those OKRs need to tie together to the strategy. So again, you need to have a company strategy before you start with OKRs, also when you're going to start with an OKR pilot. And then let the department or the teams in that department, let them connect their OKRs to the strategy and see how it works. And if they use OKRs for a couple of cycles, then eventually OKRs are going to work, and they will be an example for the rest of the organization. And then the other departments might have interest in it, like, oh, we saw that you achieved your goals, those ambitious goals. We are also interested in it, and maybe then you can roll them out to the rest of the organizations. If all of this is not possible, then as a manager or as a leader, start trying to use private OKRs. So try to use them in your private life, experience with them, try to write them down, try to see the difference between bad OKRs and good OKRs, learn from that, and only then bring them to your teams. So there are a couple of implementation options over here. So there's many more this organization learned from implementation from implementing OKRs, but in the end they contacted me as a consultant to help them implementing the OKRs in the other quarters, and that's an approach that you could take. So you can contact an OKR consultant or an OKR coach to help you with the initial setup of the OKR system. But you can also try to use the tips that I have now. And one of that is that you should have a clear mission, vision, strategy defined. So start with that. If you want to use OKRs, start with defining a clear mission, vision, and strategy for your company. Because without it, OKRs will fail, because OKRs help you with the execution of your strategy. So if you don't have a strategy, OKRs will fail. So start with this. And then try to think about the reasons why you're going to introduce OKRs, and try to implement OKRs and introduce them as a vegetable. So they're not good news, maybe, or maybe it is. But try to start small with OKRs and gradually implement them in your OKRs. So don't try to implement OKRs throughout your organization the first time. So start small, start on team level, start on the executive team level first, and then if that works for a couple of cycles, then go down to the operational teams. And only if that works, then you can maybe think about personal OKRs or something like that. But the first few years, that's quite tough. Google uses OKRs for 20 years now, and they started using OKRs on a personal level, but it's really tough to implement. If you start with OKRs, don't try to overstretch yourself in the first cycle. So don't try to set very ambitious goals, because first you want to learn from how OKRs work. You need to learn how the OKR cycle works. And if that is under control, if you master the OKR cycles, if you know how to set good OKRs, then you can maybe scale up and try to set more ambitious OKRs. It all comes down to patience. An OKR implementation for a small organization typically lasts between 1 year and 1.5 years. For larger organizations, this will take even longer. So it takes a couple of cycles. Maybe you're going to start using quarterly OKR cycles. Give it at least 4 cycles. And then you should iterate and learn as much as possible. So after you finish every cycle, then try to iterate and learn from your OKR implementation. Try to learn from your mistakes and implement and take them to the next cycle. So you need to adopt the OKR system to your organization. There's no one size fit all. There's no certification. The only way how to implement OKRs is start doing it and learn from it and learn how to implement it in your organizational culture. So what's really important is that you're going to start learning, and of course that you're going to move now, and make sure that you make that change. OKR is a big organizational change, but you need to make the change, and well, start with OKRs now, I would say. And if you want to know more about OKRs, there's a free OKR email course that you can subscribe. There are 13 lessons for free. So just go to my website, follow this link or scan this QR code, and then you get 13 lessons for free. And that was it. So my name is Bart, and I'm a consultant at Moving the Needle. If you like to contact me, then just follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or subscribe on my newsletter. So that was it. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thanks, Bart. That was a really succinct overview of OKRs, as well as a great case study that you have to share with our listeners on OKR implementation, which had probably gone wrong, and how could you make it a lot better. We're going to open the webinar for Q&A now, and how we're going to go about it is if you could type your question onto the chat window, and Bart would be happy to take them. So let's hear some questions on the chat window. Okay, we're just going to give. Okay, so we just got the first one, which is from Natalia. And the question, Bart, is how are OKRs connected with KPIs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I got that question quite often. And what I just explained in my presentation is that KPIs are key performance indicators. They are a snapshot of your organization. They monitor something, they monitor performance. So KPIs are typically used to monitor your business as usual. You want to keep an eye on them. And they're indicators. So they indicate how healthy your organization is. So this is the realm of KPIs. OKRs, on the other hand, provide you with ambitious targets, ambitious goals that you want to achieve. So they're different. They are there to change the way your customers or your employees behave. And you can use it as a strategic instrument to achieve your ambitious goals. So they're really different in that sense, is that KPIs don't say what kind of targets you should go for. And of course, inside your key results, you can use KPIs, you can use metrics, but they're different things. So OKRs are there to describe the future. So they describe the picture of success, where KPIs define the present. So they provide they provide you with a snapshot of today. So that's the big difference.
Thanks, Bart. Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. KPIs could probably be part of KR statements, but as you rightly said, OKRs really stretch organizations to take on those aspirational and moonshot ones, but at the same time achievable. So thank you for responding to that. So we have another question from Vikram R. and he wants the link to the free OKR course. So we could probably mail that over to our participants if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. So we're going to drop a note to all participants after the webinar. Okay, so as we're just waiting for more questions, is there anybody else who'd like to type it out? Okay, great. So, if there are, and the question is, in your experience in the company, would you include EBITDA as an OKR? Okay, so this is a really interesting question.
Yes. So I see that a lot when companies start with OKRs. They include the EBIT rate, or they're going to implement, they're going to have revenue or cost reduction as key results. And the problem with that is, first of all, they're not really inspirational or aspirational, because not all employees have something with revenue and costs, right? They don't come to work on cost reduction or to look at the revenue numbers the whole time, right? Unless you are the CFO of the company. You should always think about what will drive revenue for you. What kind of employee or what kind of customer behavior will drive your revenue? What kind of customer behavior or employee behavior will drive cost reduction? And you should think about that, and then try to think about putting metrics on that. So to give you an example, if you're a web shop or if you're a SaaS company and you want to increase revenue, then what will drive that revenue? For example, maybe the number of website visitors. So because the number of website visitors will turn into leads. So then the thing that you want to measure is maybe daily website visitors, to give you an example. So you need to think about that. So then you should measure the number of daily website visitors, or even better, the number of daily return visitors. Because if people are going to return to your website, they maybe end up into quality leads, which will drive revenue. And in order to increase that number, in order to make sure that people will return to your website, that is causing a change in human behavior. So, and then you could invite the teams to think about, well, what can we do to increase that number? Instead of asking the teams to think about how they can increase revenue, because it's way too vague. People don't understand what they need to do. So you need to be as specific as possible when you're defining your key results. So it's a mistake that I often see when you're starting with OKRs, to include revenue and EBIT data into your company OKRs or team OKRs.
Okay, so we've got a question which comes out quite popularly, which is on how do you de-link compensation from OKRs?
Yeah, that's a good one. And it starts with individual OKRs. So like I explained in the presentation, when you're starting out with OKRs, try to start with company OKRs and maybe 1 or 2 team OKR. If you're getting better at OKR implementation after a few cycles, then you should consider that maybe other teams will start using OKRs as well. And after that, so then you're a couple of OKR cycles away, then you might want to think about trying to use personal OKRs. And of course, if you're a smaller organization, if you're a startup, then the marketing team might be just one person. So then you should think about, is this a personal OKR or is this still a team OKR or department OKR? That put aside, there's still compensation, and you see this especially with sales organizations, sales departments. And the problem is that people are going to sandbag with that. So let's say that as a salesperson, you need to bring in 2 million of revenue, and that will be your target. And if you achieve that target, you'll get the bonus, or you'll get a compensation in salary. So what you want is that your sales team is going for some ambitious goal. Maybe after a few cycles, you're ready, and you invite the team to push themselves a little bit outside of their comfort zone into their learning zone. So they need to work differently. In order to do that, they need to stretch themselves a bit. But people are not going to stretch themselves if they know that they will miss their bonus, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to lower their targets. They're going to lower the key results. So in the end, it is if you're going to do that, then people will not go for their stretch ambitions. They will just lower them. And this is not what you want as a company. So this is one reason why you don't want to do that. So I think personal OKRs can work, but then you should not tie them together to your compensation. But for example, you can use them for personal development. So instead of having a personal development plan, maybe you should have an OKR that describes your personal development in the future. So one year from now, how does your personal development look like? What did you learn, and how can you measure that? And that's a different take on using OKRs at the personal level. But management should be really careful not to reward that. So you should reward the process of getting to your OKR. And then, of course, you can put some bonuses on that or to compensate. But it's very difficult, and it requires a very disciplined and senior management to follow this. So it's very difficult to do. It can be achieved, but my recommendation is first start with company OKRs and team OKRs. And if you're really good at that, then try to use it at a personal level and then use them for personal development. So it really depends on the maturity of the organization.
Yeah, that's a great response. In fact, just wanted to add a couple of points to that. We've seen organizations use it in two ways. Some are purists. They use OKRs completely dealing from compensation, and they have a separate cycle for their committed. And there are organizations who reward people for only probably a rating, which is going into a compensation cycle, and now it gets a lot more broader. So that's been really our experience. On that note, there's an additional question which has come from Anand Iyer. And the question is, initially you use OKRs only at a corporate or a company level, and how does this execution and check-ins really get penetrated as you go down the organization? So it seems like a little bit contrarian is his opinion. So Bart, would you just like to respond to that in terms of OKR implementation from the organization to weekly check-ins?
Yeah, so when you start implementing OKRs, one of the things that you want to implement is OKR check-ins. So you want to start with OKR check-ins right away. And the reason for that is that you want to get very fast feedback. So you also probably read in the books that there's a mechanism called OKR grading. And OKR grading is basically the same concept that you had in high school. At the end of your semester or whatever, you get a grade. And then, well, you do something with that. And in OKR terms, you grade your OKRs, or you grade your key results at the end of the quarter, or at the end of the OKR cycle, or maybe in between. And then you're going to learn and maybe adjust. but for many organizations, this is way too late. So you need to have faster feedback so you can try to adjust on how to achieve your key results. So if on a weekly basis, you're going to check in on your key results, and you're going to give a confidence score to your key results, you can on a weekly basis decide what kind of actions, what kind of initiatives, what kind of experiments you will do in order to move the needle on your key results. So if you do it only at the end of the quarter, then you're too late, and then you can't do anything anymore. What it also will tell you is that if you're going to do weekly OKR check-ins, you will notice that maybe you don't see the needle moving. For example, in the example that we just had before, if you're going to measure revenue as part of one of your key results, then if you do weekly check-ins, then you probably don't see the revenue number go up, because revenue is probably reported on a monthly basis. So then you get a lot of lame meetings, right? So they're a little bit dull, because every week you're going to check in on your key results, but nothing moves. So it's also an art to find the right metrics that you can use in your weekly check-ins. Yeah, so that's also important, and this is stuff that you will learn over time. But if you don't start with weekly check-ins, you'll miss the opportunity to learn and to create better metrics. So start using OKR check-ins at the company level, and for that you can use town hall meetings. I've seen organizations that do OKR check-ins with a department of 150 people, then everybody will participate in the OKR check-in. It's all about goal transparency and making sure that everybody is aligned. So you need to start with that right away. If you don't do OKR check-ins, then I guarantee that your OKR implementation will fail.
Yeah, thanks, Bart. And I couldn't agree with you more on the weekly check-ins by teams, because we find that teams who do their check-ins on OKR progress regularly, the adoption is a lot more seamless. So there's a shift from doing, let's say, a mid-year or a year-end goal check-in to a weekly check-in, and that really brings a lot more enthusiasm to the goal management process. So absolutely second you on that.
Yeah, I agree. But this is a big culture shift for most organizations to have these weekly meetings and to make everything transparent. It hurts. It can hurt an organization, or it can hurt managers, because all of a sudden they need to make their work visible, and that can be scary. So it takes time that this will be adopted, but you need to start with it right away if you can.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. I don't see any more questions come into the chat window. Would anybody like to ask the last question before we close the webinar? Okay, great. Special thanks to Bart for this very informative session on OKRs. It's given a great one-on-one approach to what an OKR is all about, followed by a really amazing case study. And as they say, if you measure everything, you measure nothing. So that's what OKRs are all about. They'll help you bring that sharp focus into what you'd really like to measure, and that's what matters most to your organizations. So on that note, we've come to the end of this webinar, and we look forward to interacting with you in future webinars as well. Thanks a lot. And
thanks for having me, Virga, and looking forward to meet you in the future.
Oh yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.